Imagine waking up one day with the inability to move your legs as efficiently as you did the day prior. Imagine thinking nothing of it and going about your day, only with a slight inkling that something was just a little bit odd. Imagine living through the next few months like normal, but throughout it, slowly losing the ability to perform everyday kind of actions like walking, bike riding, climbing stairs, running, and engaging in your favorite sports like football, soccer, and karate. 19 years ago, this was the reality for a client of mine by the name of Jason Jones, aka this guy. He woke up one day during his 26th year to a condition known as Hereditary Spastic Paraplegia taking a hold of his body. During the months and years following this, slowly but surely this disease began to take over, impacting upon his life in numerous ways. The odds were stacked against him, that's for sure, but despite what the doctors told him, his reality has been far from what was expected of him in the years spanning 2012 to now. Hereditary Spastic Paraplegia, or HSP, is a rare genetic disease that causes lower limb stiffness and weakness. Currently, it affects roughly 0.5 to 5.5 people per 100,000. How it affects people is by impacting upon the nervous system. More specifically, it attacks what are known as motor neurons. These motor neurons are the connection between the brain and the limbs and are responsible for enabling movement via the muscles. So, as you've probably gathered, when it comes to HSP, movement capabilities become severely hindered. To paint a clearer picture, let's take a look at how HSP can be classified. Pure and complex. Pure form HSP is the clear case version whereby individuals will typically experience symptoms such as an abnormal walking gait, a hyperactive bladder, and or vibratory sensation impairment in the lower limbs. Complex form HSP, on the other hand, is, as you probably gathered, the more complicated version. It entails all the same symptoms as the pure form, plus a whole lot more like motor neuron degeneration, where neurons lose their functioning capabilities, cognitive issues, where learning, thinking, and problem solving becomes more difficult, skin abnormalities, and digestive, breathing, and even hearing impairments. What this all means is that HSP can be quite a negative experience in one's way of life. It also means that it can be quite difficult to diagnose individuals because there is such a diverse group of disorders that can arise alongside HSP. There's no doubt that this is all very serious stuff, not to mention that it can show up at any stage in one's life, and because of this, you're probably wondering how it all develops. So let's turn to that. As I said at the start of this video, HSP is an inherited genetic disease. What this means is that HSP is passed on through generations via genes. There are a number of genes that code for HSP, with new ones being discovered almost annually. Some of these go by the names of SPG3A, 4, 7, 11, and 31, and all can affect individuals at different stages of their life and in different ways too. But to give you a better idea, when talking about a gene, without overcomplicating it, a gene is made up of something that Jurassic Park has ensured we all know of, DNA. It is estimated that around 20,000 genes are in the human body, which enables us to look the way we look and function the way we function. But speaking of looking the way we look and functioning the way we function, it is important to understand the difference between two genetic terms, genotypes and phenotypes. In short, our genotype is basically the set of genes that an organism, just like you, possesses. Our phenotype, on the other hand, are the characteristics that are observable. For example, when referring to traits like eye color, height, and skin color, whilst the observable characteristics of these come under our phenotype, the genes that encode for what we have come under our genotype. And while we are not fully equipped with being able to tamper with our genotypes as of right now, our phenotypes can be influenced by both our genotype and our environment. So when talking about HSP, for the HSP phenotype to arise, there are a number of genetic mutations that exist. Some of these include abnormal lipid metabolism and abnormal DNA repair. Regardless of the mutation that leads to the phenotype, however, the pathophysiology behind this disease is as follows. 1. Neuronal degeneration or abnormal development of an important tract in the body known as the corticospinal tract. And 2. Degeneration or abnormal development of what is known as the dorsal column axons in an area known as the fasciculus gracilis. Okay, so this can be all quite overwhelming stuff, so how about we do a quick recap? In short, HSP is a rare disease that affects the lower motor neurons of an individual. The effect that HSP has upon the body results in weakness and spasticity in the lower limbs. There are two forms of HSP, pure and complex. Pure form entails symptoms like walking gait and sensory impairment. Complex form entails the same, plus more like cognitive impairment and breathing and digesting issues. There are many genes that code for HSP, although they are inheritable, meaning they are passed down through generations. Okay, so with all that said, let me now introduce you to Jason. From extreme calf tightness to cramps to losing the ability to engage in karate, to replacing shoes every 2 months, to being kicked out and denied to enter pubs and clubs simply because of the mistakenly drunken-esque walking gait that he has, Jason's life has never been the same since his 26th orbit. But since you are now versed with the overview of this disease and its inheritability, let's take it back a few years, shall we? In doing so, let's go right back to Jason's nana and pop. Whilst it is unknown that either of them had an HSP gene, it is known that Jason's nana's brother had the disease. Despite this, he managed to push into his 80s and was not wheelchair bound, while she unfortunately passed away from motor neuron disease, a disease that on average takes the lives of 2 people each day in Australia in her early 50s. Jason's nan and pop had 5 children in total, 2 girls and 3 boys. Of these 5 offspring, 3 of them possessed the SPG4 gene of HSP, one of which was his father. His father, along with his uncle, developed symptoms of HSP in his mid to late 20s. His auntie, on the other hand, developed symptoms during her early 50s. Without counting second marriages, Jason's nana and pop's children gave birth to 12 children in total. All but one of them, i.e. Jason, does not possess the SPG4 gene. However, one of his cousins has 4 children, with one of them showing HSP symptoms since birth. But bringing the story back to Jason now, surprisingly, when he awoke that day during his 26th year to HSP taking over, he barely even noticed it. His mother was the one that noticed that he was dragging his toes a little bit differently, and he even recalls not feeling like he had a condition until one day when he caught his own reflection in a window and noticed that his walking gait was statistically abnormal. It wasn't until a few years later that Jason fully experienced the extent to which HSP impacted upon his life. A life that entailed him losing the ability to engage in activities that he previously loved doing. A life that entailed his gait worsening, his strength deteriorating, his lower limb spasticity increasing, his balance suffering, and of course, many falls. During all of this, he experienced things like struggling to plant his heels to the ground and maintain composure when walking around. He even struggled to perform simple movements that most of us take for granted, like standing up from chairs. His doctors were adamant on the fact that his destiny entailed a wheelchair, much like his father's, and that there was simply nothing he could do about his condition. But fast forward 5 odd years, and Jason is stronger and more mobile than he has ever been since his mid-20s. Following bilateral calf tendon release surgery, where ranges of motion were again obtainable, he has not looked back since. Jason keeps on top of his HSP through some very simple yet highly necessary regular practices. So let's now turn to that. HSP management, whilst it cannot ensure a complete remedy of the disease, can ensure dampening and holding off of some of the inevitabilities that are experienced with it. As previously discussed, weakness and tightness are 2 of the major symptoms of HSP that play a large role with influencing one's gait. So to counteract this, Jason focuses on both of these issues by performing self-myofascial release on his legs with a foam roller, as demonstrated in this video. To back up this type of release, he also keeps on top of his stretching, and as seen in this video, 3 of his favourite stretches are kefs, where he attempts to stretch to his full capabilities whilst maintaining a strict position with his thigh, and of course a simple calf stretch variation that can be formed on an angled box or your standard weight plate. Lastly, Jason does something that should be included in everyone's exercise plan: strengthening and activating muscle groups. This is crucial for not only aiding in Jason's movements, but also to ensure that other areas of his body do not overwork. For example, by keeping on top of his strength training, it helps him keep his body balanced, where all areas of his body are doing the best job that they can do. Of course, all of this is not very complicated stuff, but it is indeed necessary for Jason to keep on top of his HSP. And without sounding too much like my high school English teacher, all of this is an ongoing journey for Jason. One that is hard, no doubt, but one that has also resulted him in finding new passions, hobbies, and of course, friendships. There is no denying that this disease has impacted on his life in so many ways, but a truly inspiring fact in all of this is that he has not crawled under a rock and given up. Instead, Jason persistently chooses to live his life to the fullest, engaging in several extracurricular activities, speaking at events, and always keeping a positive outlook on it all. Something we all should do far more often. Hey guys, Hayden here. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you'd like to learn more about HSP, make sure you check out the links in the description. If you want to follow Jason, check out his page at My Journey with HSP. Thanks for sharing your story with us, Jason. And thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.